Remember the election we just had? Well, turns out McKinley would not in fact be giving American citizens 4 more years of prosperity, as he would be assassinated in 1901, mere months into his second term. What is interesting is that his assassination did not come out of the blue. In fact, George Cortelyou, a member of McKinley's cabinet, was concerned for the president's safety due to multiple assassinations and assassination attempts by anarchists in Europe, such as King Umberto I of Italy. Despite his worries and attempts to remove the public reception from the president's visit to the Pan American Exposition, McKinley insisted on giving a speech and meeting the people. Even with additional security, he would meet his killer, Leon Frank Kizolgas? Let me Google for that.
Czolgosz.
Who was motivated by his anarchist ideas, shot McKinley in the abdomen at point-blank range. During an interview, he revealed his motives. I did it because he was an enemy to the good people, the good working people. McKinley's wounds were not fatal, and his physicians were optimistic about his recovery despite the very real possibility of infection or sepsis. So optimistic that Roosevelt himself left for a trip to the Adirondacks. The people of the nation and the world have every reason to believe that the assassin's bullets will not deprive the country of another noble executive. Quote by P.M. Rixley. McKinley's leading physician, Dr. McBurney, was especially optimistic about the president's recovery, stating that the president was not entirely out of the woods, but that he was well on the way to recovery in the many interviews he gave to the eager journalists. He even planned a trip to Niagara Falls while the president was just a week into recovery. There is still a slight danger of peritonitis, but the chances that the president may develop symptoms are so small that they are no longer considered. This optimism from McKinley's team of physicians was a major reason why McKinley's death just a few days later was so devastating to the American people. McKinley's wounds got infected. The medication to control and eliminate an infection did not yet exist, so the diagnosis of an infection in the abdomen was a death sentence. The infection in McKinley's abdomen would spread and eventually grow septic. Not too long after this, he would succumb to sepsis of the abdomen and die September 14, 1901, 8 days after being shot. All across the country, people grieved for their president, setting up special prayer services, dedicating church services to him, holding memorials, and, of course, expressing outrage at Leon, as well as condemning anarchists and Polish people/immigrants in general. While today McKinley is remembered as a lukewarm president, in his time he was well loved, being considered by many as the most beloved president of his time. Hundreds of thousands of people around the nation congregated en masse to pay respects to McKinley's body as it toured the Capitol and the Stark County Courthouse before finally being laid to rest. Roosevelt would rush to D.C. to assume the role of president, finishing the remaining 3 years of McKinley's presidency. He would assume charge of a nation in a state of grief and economic downturn due to the effect that the president's assassination had on the stock market. Though well remembered in modern times, he was not very well liked in his party up until now, being seen as ambitious but doomed to fade into obscurity, being given the title of vice president only to get his hands out of the Senate. The vice president office has long been a shelf upon which too ambitious or aspiring men have been placed by the leaders of their party. Of course, ever strong-headed, he did not keep up with the tradition of his position, leading to even more disapproval among his party. He was distrusted alike by party members and money powers and compelled to continue the usual routine work of presiding over the Senate. As the presiding officer, he could not even appoint a committee. However, to help quell his party's fears and build himself up for the next presidential race, Roosevelt promised to keep the same cabinet and policies that McKinley set in place. Roosevelt, while controversial at his time, would quickly outshine McKinley in love from the American people. Still, dozens of statues, monuments, and other memorials would be dedicated to McKinley in the coming years until in the late 1920s, when America would largely forget about him. Funny how that happens, huh? McKinley was the pride of his party, while Teddy was largely saw as an annoying tag-along. In modern day, the Republican Party pays little attention to McKinley, but loves having Teddy as a mascot, even though they would call him a radical liberal today, what with all of his progressive ideas and wanting to put the interests of the poor people above business. But I guess that just goes to show how much things have changed in the American political landscape.